5:50. Okay, so someone make an announcement when they start drinking. You have an announcement? Okay. We're going to start on Daf Daled. Days 4V. Yeah. See that? There's two dots. Ashkechan. It must be 12 lines from the top. Can we thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day? So we learn. We have Beis Hamikdash. Beis Hamikdash immediately. And let's see what just came in. And also we're learning our first Shlema for everyone that needs, and my father, and for Naftali, Bela. Okay. We have to go back what we're discussing. We're learning about karbanos that were brought shalei lishma, not for the right intention. So the whole last page that we learned was if the intention was for a different sacrifice. So, and we learned that if you have intention for a different sacrifice, by each of the different avodas, there were four main avodas, right? There was the avodah very nice. Really, Shiva Bachar. Avodah of Shchita, Kabbalah. Remember, Shchita is the slaughtering, Kabbalah is the receiving of the blood, the Ilacha, bringing the blood, and then sprinkling. Those are the four main avodas. We said that each of those, we have a special lima that tells me that Shalei Lishma is not good. Shalei Lishma, if it's for the wrong sacrifice, then it doesn't help the owner fulfill his obligation. We said, what if we switch owners? Shalei L'Shem Bala, for you slaughtered for a different, to sprinkle the blood for a different owner. So we're holding right now in the Gemara is that we learned that you can't shecht it for a different owner. We also learned that you can't sprinkle the blood for a different owner. Okay, now we say Ashkechan Zvicho Zrika. So far, when it comes to Shinoi Bail, when it comes to Shinoi Karban Dalaram Beis by the word Ashkechan. Yeah. When it comes to Shinoi Bailam, we learned all the Avedas. Okay, Shinoi Karban, we learned all the Avedas. By Shinoi Bailam, we only have so far Shchita, which means Zvicha and Shchita is the same thing, and Zrika, sprinkling of blood. Now, Kabbalah Minalan, how do you know receiving of the blood with the intention? With the intention to it's receiving the blood with the intention to sprinkle it for a different owner. How do we know that that's not going to be acceptable? So the Gemara says, what? We have a precedent. We see the other two services, which is the slaughtering and the sprinkling of the blood, needs to be for the right owner. Same thing, Kabbalah. Also, the receiving of the blood. The Gemara says, 1 second. There's certain types of things that you're not allowed to do to an animal outside the temple. You're not allowed to slaughter for a sacrifice. You can't sprinkle the blood for a sacrifice. What about catching the blood in a utensil for a sacrifice? That it doesn't talk about. So we could say that maybe when it comes to having intention for the wrong owner, that's only by the slaughtering and by the sprinkling of the blood, which is not allowed b'chutz. What about Kabbalah, which it doesn't mention? Rav Ashi says, Josh, you had a comment? L'chaim. Rav Ashi, Asim El Nazir. We're going to learn from the El Nazir. The Nazir has to bring a sacrifice. Does it say what type of sacrifice it is? I know it's a ram, but does it say if it's a chatas? Or is it an oila or a shlamim? Shlamim. The pasuk is going to tell us the shlamim. It says, Rav Ashi says, Asmil Nazir, we're going to learn from the Ram of the Nazir. The Ksiva Sa'ayel Yasa Zevach Shlamim. Gemara said the pasuk, the Gemara quotes the pasuk. But the Ram should be brought as a Shlamim. What happened? Too much commentary?
I'm looking. I'm in Horayot.
Oh, so get the next volume.
Yeah. I'm not looking.
There were once two chabrusas that were learning. One was learning brachas and one was learning bechiras. It took him 6 months to figure out. Okay.
That's so funny.
Okay,
I
so
don't think it's true. We'll call it out.
so we're going to learn from it says Vesa'ayel Yasa Zevach Shlam Sheteas Yosel L'Shem Shlamim. Okay, now this looks like it's not giving us the right it's giving us an answer to a different question. It says that the Riyam has to be made for a Shlamim. Now, we already learned that when you can't change the type of carbon, we already learned that. That was the whole Dalet Amid Aleph. Now we're on Dalet Amid Beis. We're talking about changing the owner, not the carbon. But the Gemara says, you can't say that it's teaching us Shini Kaidesh, changing which carbon it is, because we already learned that before. So in Meina Inyan, this is what we do. In Meina Inyan, if it's not for this, so we'll use it for something else. So then we'll use it for Shinei Bailam. Amalei Ravacha Breder Rava Ravacha Bar Abel Rava. Ravacha Bar Abel says to Rava, Ema Yasa Klal Zevach is Prat. Bala Prat the Klal Ema Bechal Masha Befrat. Zvichen Midachin Ilay. So if you take a look at that pasuk says Vesa'ayel Yasa Zevach Shlamim. Now we're learning from that the Riyam has to be slaughtered for the sake of a shlamim. You can't switch carbon. He said, well, we already know you can't switch carbon. So it's coming to teach me that you can't switch owners. That's what we're learning. Umar says, Ravacha Bar Rabba is saying, maybe there's really a klal uprat here. The rule of klal uprat is if you start off with something general. It's ayel yasa. The Riyam, you should make it. Now, okay, that's the klal. Now, zevach is the slaughtering of it. Zevach means the shchita. Zevach shlam, so the shchita has to be for the shlamim. It started off that you should make it entirely for shlamim. It means by all the avodas. But it turns out, if you look at the prat with the detail, the rule is ein bechlal ala masha befrat. When you have a klal prat, when you have a general and a specific, the whole general rule is only teaching me the specific, because you just specified that that's all you're referring to. You're only talking about the detail. What is the detail? Shchita, zvicha, in midachin elay. So maybe it's not coming to teach me about any of the other services that need to be brought as a shlamim, which I don't need it to tell me, so therefore needs to be brought for the right owner. But maybe it's only shchita. And by the way, shchita I already had. I was looking for Kabbalah. I already know shchita and zrika, the slaughtering and the sprinkling of the blood. Gemara says, "Iksiv yaseh shlamim zebach." If you would switch the order in the pasuk and it would say, "You should make it as a shlamim zebach kedekamret," then you're right. That would have been a klal prat. But hashdiksiv yaseh zebach shlamim, you should make it as a slaughtering of a shlamim. Havle klal sheina malei, v'chol klal sheina malei, and danasim b'klal prat. There's 1 second. You don't have the full klal here, the full general rule, because the general rule is divided. The general is divided by the prat. It's Yasa Shlamim is the general. You should make it as a Shlamim, but you didn't even say what you're making it as. It says Yasa, you should make it Zebach, a slaughtering of a Shlamim. So if it would have said Yasa Shlamim, then we'd say, okay, we have a general. Zebach, slaughtering, okay, that's a specific. But because you didn't complete, it's a split, not personality. It breaks up the verb, the yasa, with what it's supposed to be made as. It splits the clause, and so therefore we're saying that you can't learn it as a klal prat. Okay, now if you can't learn it as a klal prat, that leaves us with an answer, not a kasha. That we've now answered our question. We thought maybe it's going to be a klal prat, and then it's only going to teach us shchita. No, you can't use it as a klal prat, so it teaches us everything. Ravina says, Leilam done it. Really, it could be a klal prat. You know what? It could be. However, V'la Hashem chazar klal. The pasuk says, Yasa Zevach Shlamim LaHashem. For Hashem. That's very general. That's very inclusive. Right? Yasa, you should make it. Okay, good. General. Zevach, slaughtering. Specific. LaHashem, for Hashem, is back in general. What's the rule when you have a klal, a prat, a klal? General, specific, and a general. So it doesn't limit it to just the general. It limits it to anything. It includes everything similar to the specific. So it's more inclusive now. What's it coming to include? It's coming to include everything that's an avodah. The Gemara says, Ravina was the one that was suggesting that it's a klal, a prat, a klal, and then it will be all inclusive. It says, but there's a discrepancy between the first klal and the second klal. Why klal kama, the first klal, the first general, which was said Yasa, he should make it marbe asayas v'sulai. Making it means that you make it as a sacrifice. What's the sacrifice? The 4 avodas. What are the 4 avodas? Shchita, Kabbalah, Zrika, Shchita, Kabbalah, Hilacha, and Zrika. And so that way would only be talking about, it would be talking about all of them. Then the middle one tells me, the prat would tell me just Shchita. Klal Basra, Kol Hashem, I feel Shvichas Shiraim, Aktar Simurim. That's telling me every part of the sacrifice, which is referring to, besides for the avodas, it's also referring to the spilling out the remainder of the blood on the corner of the altar, and also the offering up of the limbs, which wasn't discussed before. It's not included in the first klal. So the Gemara says, "Hatanad be'Bishmal beklali uprati darish ki agavna." Says, don't worry about that, because it was taught in the house of Rabbi Yishmael that you can make a klal prat even like this. Klal prat to klal, yet the danel kana prat. You have a klal prat to klal. So you can only include in that anything that's similar to the specific. Ma prat mefurish avodah bin lishma, avkol avodah bin lishma. So to teach me that anything that's an avodah, coordinating.
You looked at that at ChatGPT.
I did.
Coordinating conjunction. It's
Then, while, but, those kind of words. That's what you're looking for.
something like that.
But you need to still need the power.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Chat.
You wins.
very good. So we're learning now.
So all we have to do is
Look.
We're learning now that Ma Prat Mefurish says anything that's an avodah has to be done lishma. So too, anything that's avodah has to be done lishma. Like the general is an avodah. So okay, now again, it's teaching me that it needs to be done lishma for the sake of a carbon, but because I don't need it for the sake of this carbon, because I already learned that on Dalet Amid Aleph. So we're going to use it for, and it has to be brought for the right owner, right? Because already that we already. Now the Gemara says, maybe, maybe when we're talking about avodah, maybe it's talking about things that you would be chayav if you did it outside the temple. For example, shchita zrika in. That would include slaughtering it and sprinkling the blood. But Kabbalah v'Halacha alai, there's no prohibition against catching the blood in a cup or walking with the blood outside the temple. There's no prohibition if it's not a sacrifice. There's no not if it's not a sacrifice, but just to walk with the blood anywhere outside the temple wouldn't have the prohibition of shchutei chutz, inami, or also ma'aprat mefurish davar atan tzafin v'yeshna mechatais pnimis. I've called ten some v'yeshna mechatais pnimis shchita v'kabbalah and zrika loy. Or maybe we should not exclude the Kabbalah and Halacha. Maybe we should exclude zrika, because here we're talking about something the El Shlamim has to be done on the tzafin. Interesting. That has to be done on the tzafin. Now, anything that the shchit has to be done on the north. Tzafin is the north. So, what would that include? That would include all the sin offerings, which includes the sin offering, which the blood is sprinkled inside, not outside. So what would that include? What would that you see the sin offering where the blood is inside is not similar to the other ones where the blood is sprinkled outside. So I need something that's similar by all of them. What's similar by all of them is the slaughtering of it and the catching of the blood. So and that would leave out the sprinkling. And what I was looking for here was the catching of the blood. So okay, which is good because the sprinkling I had already from before. So now the Gemara is telling me is I have two options. Either I learn Shchita and Zrika, and I leave out Kabbalah and Halacha, or I learn Shchita and Kabbalah, and I leave out Zrika, but I would include Kabbalah. So the Gemara now says, well, you can go both ways with this. So Shkulenheim, it's equal. You have no way of deciding. So B'yavayu Shnayim, so we're going to learn both of them. We're going to learn both of them. It's going to teach me the Shchita and the Zrika. It's also going to teach me the Kabbalah. Still missing halacha, but okay. Oh, how am I going to get halacha? Rashi says that halacha will come automatically together with Kabbalah. So it's receiving, because with the pasuk that talks about halacha, this pasuk that talks about halacha sheikh l'chutz. Just 1 second. Halacha is going to be included with Kabbalah. Okay. I'm sorry? That what? It gets included all together? Over here it does, I don't know. Only 4 pages in.
Oh, you have your cup back.
Yeah,
Step
you're
away.
getting like about 5 minutes.
Wait, ice coffee.
What?
Seven.
You said to me, you got 5 more minutes?
Yeah, I set an alarm for the fast,
Oh, I
for the
know
fast
you
time.
did.
And it's
Okay.
2 minutes early, but like
We're careful. Above the letter of the law.
I thought it was 39, sorry.
Oh, so you're asking me why I'm still drinking. Oh. Okay. They said over here it's 50.
59.
Okay.
What fee?
58 on the machine downstairs, and it's at
Iba Yisema.
You
No, I'm
another
sorry, I
18
skipped
minutes to drive
listen,
to?
Achrina, another interpretation is Chada v'Chada Teiku b'Milsa, that we can learn each one. Let me see how your Gemara translates that. Each one stands in its place, which means there's no reason to exclude one in favor of the other. But I thought that's what we just said. Shkulenheim v'Yavayish name. Okay, another version of the same thing. Iba Yisema Zrika midirav Ashi Nafka. So, and now the Gemara has another pshat. It says, really, we can learn Zrika because from Rav Ashi before. Rav Ashi said before, V'nir tzaloi l'chaper alav. The Gemara says, the V'nir tzaloi, we learn from, it'll be an appeasement for him. It tells me that there needs to be for this owner and not for a different owner. That's what we're learning. So that's for Zrika. And then the generalization, the klal, the prat klal, will come to teach me the Kabbalah. There are 2 ways of going about this. Either the klal of prat klal is going to teach me both. I'm sorry. Either klal of prat is going to teach me both, or it's going to teach me just Kabbalah, and I can learn the Zrika from Rav. Okay, Ashkechan El Nazir. What we just did here was we're trying to derive that the carbon needs to be brought for the right owner. Had an actual source for this, and the source was from the El Nazir, from the Riyam of the Nazir, which was extra. He said this is coming to teach us that, and it needs to be brought for the right owner. Gemara says 1 second, but you only have that an El Nazir needs to be brought for the right owner. How do you know other karbanos need to be brought for the right owner? Shar Shlam and Minalan, how do we know other peace offerings need to be brought for the right owner? If we say that we'll learn from it, well, precedent. One second. Can't learn from this one. This one is more strict because this one is part of a set. You bring this El Nazar and you also bring a Chatas and a Naila. So you have, it's like a set. So therefore, this needs to be brought for the right owner, but maybe other sacrifices not. So the Gemara says, Imkei Nichtev Shalmei. Zevach Shlamim, it should be Zevach Shalmei, or Shlamav, it really should say. My Shlamim, the rabbis call Shlamim. It's coming to include all peace offerings here, the fact that it has that extra man. Okay. Ashkan Shlamim. So far you only left with Shlamim. But Shar Kacham Minal. And how do we know that other sacrifices need to be brought for the right owner? Okay. Okay, we'll learn from Shlamim, which is sets a precedent. Where it says, Ma'al Shlamim, Shekain Tunin Smichan Sachim Tunifas Chasav Shaykh. 1 second. Shlamim is very unique. When you bring a Shlamim, you have to lean on the animal, you have to pour the wine, and you have to bring the meal offering. You also have to wave the chest and the thigh. So unique. It doesn't mean that wouldn't tell me other sacrifices have the same restrictions or stringencies. So we have a pasuk. Pasuk says, I have a pasuk that says, these are the laws for all the sacrifices, for the burnt offering, for the meal offering, for the sin offering, the guilt offering, inauguration offering, for the peace offering. It says, wow, everything is compared to the shlamim. Just like when it comes to a peace offering, whether it's Shina Kodesh, you can't change which sacrifice you're bringing it for. It means we should take a last drink. It means we have to stop. Last call.
Last call for alcohol. Come on.
Okay. So,
Amen.
okay. So, just like by Shina, but just like Shlamim, it has to be for the right owner and for the right sacrifice, and also for the right owner. Afkol, also all the sacrifice, Ben Shina Kodesh, Ben Shina B'nai, Ben Lishma, needs to be for the right sacrifice and for the right owner. So far, so good. We've now figured out that sacrifices need to be brought for the right sacrifice and need to be brought for the right owner. Now, we've been ignoring one detail. We're saying that it needs to be brought for the right owner and for the right sacrifice, but what we learned in the Mishnah was that if it wasn't brought for the right owner, it's still valid. It's just, if it wasn't brought for the right sacrifice, it's still valid. You just need to, in other words, you can still eat it. You finish bringing the sacrifice, everything is good. Just the owner needs to bring another one to satisfy his vow that he had taken that he's going to bring a sacrifice. And you just brought this sacrifice, which doesn't satisfy the vow. So it's a valid sacrifice, but it doesn't satisfy his vow. So it says, 1 second. If you just tell me that it's all invalid, everything is compared to the shlamim, maybe it should be pasul. It should be invalid. Amakra, the pasuk says, to be quoted this once before already. It says the utterance of your lips you should guard and you should keep as you vowed. And it finishes off nedava, pledged. It says hi nedava nederhu. Why are you calling it a pledge? It's a vow. Rather, if you brought it exactly the way you're supposed to, then it's considered satisfying the vow. But if you didn't bring it the way you were supposed to, then it satisfies the pledge, but not a vow, which means your vow you still have to bring. Which means the sacrifice is good, but you still have to bring another one. So we're learning that it's going to be kosher. Maseches Zevachim teaches me, the utterance of your lips teaches me, that the sacrifice is valid. And Zayis Torah teaches me that the sacrifice is invalid. If it would only say this pasuk, Havamina la yada b'mai. I wouldn't know what exactly it's referring to. Which ones? It doesn't say clearly which services need to be done lishman. The kasra rachmana zeisatayra on top of the faith. So therefore, the pasuk tells me that these are the laws of all the sacrifice to teach me that it needs to be done lishman for the right sacrifice for the right owner, etc. Because Rahman says if it would only tell me Zaysatira, which tells me specifically the laws of Lishma, I mean, I could have thought that if you don't have the right intention, then it's going to be entirely puzzle. Because Rahman Maitzis, so therefore, Pasuk says Maitzis. So these are the complementary verses. One tells me it's invalid, one tells me it is valid. What's the difference? How do you reconcile that? One teaches me that it doesn't satisfy the obligation of the vow. And right, it teaches me also that that what would make it invalid is the shalei lishma by those services, those 4 services. Okay. Rami Reish Lakish al ma'ohi be midrasha makshi. Reish Lakish was lying on his stomach.
Oh, he used some.
Please explain a little bit more about that. It says that he regularly did that. Like, what's
If he had a background.
he regularly? Please. Oh, don't take any. I thought you knew. Like, so Boston.
There was I think the Talmidim of the Chazon Ish, they learn like laying back because they don't want to use any bit of extra energy. You know, like the whales, lahavdil, the whales, how they glide, because they eat only they go like 6 months without eating. So you can't use any extra, they just glide.
Whales?
Whales.
Lower?
All the whales.
For 6 months.
Yeah, I think is that true? I think they go for the months and months without eating. So they just use like very little energy. So they held that you have to conserve energy to study Torah. You don't have to take breaks to eat more. So they would lay on their backs learning, not the. So anyway, I don't know if that's connected to this.
He's lying on his stomach.
Here he's lying on his stomach.
That's really hard.
How does he learn when he's lying on his stomach?
He's getting good posture.
Yes, you lift your head up. I thought it says also you're not supposed to.
It's
You're
good
not supposed to lay
exercise.
on your stomach. It says.
Good
He says in
exercise.
Gittin that he told his daughter that why he does this. He says, my stomach are like my pillow and kalva kesa.
Oh,
So it's like his
What's a king called?
it's a cushion. Okay.
Try it.
Weiter.
Right. So he's okay. That's not the point of the Gemara.
No, but the reason is the siman lach.
Oh, really? So he's laying on his stomach and he's asking the following question. He says, 1 second. Im ksherim heim, if these sacrifices are kosher, you're to. So let them be an appeasement for the owner. The main meratzin, and if they're not an appeasement, lama bun, so why are you bringing them? He's like mimanavshach, either yes or no. What's going on over here? Amar Loi Rebbe Lazar. It says Rebbe Lazar, it's supposed to be Rebbe Lazar. Rebbe Lazar says to him, Matzino b'boyan lachem misa shen kshem ve'meratzin. Well, we have a source. He's ignoring the last Gemara that we just said, that explain that we have 2 psukim. One teaches me this and one teaches me that, and together the combination is that you bring it even though it's not a appeasement. But Rebbe Lazar tells him that we have a source. The source is that certain sacrifices are brought after the death. Now, if it's brought after the owner's death, then obviously it can't be an appeasement because he died or the owner is not there anymore. So the Tanan was taught like this. This a woman gave birth. So a woman gives birth needs to bring a sin offering plus a oila, a burnt offering. So she brought the sin offering, but then she passed away. So the inheritors can bring the carbon oila. I lost some Maser, she brings the Ayla and she passes away. Then they can't bring the Chatas because there's a rule that Chatas Shemesa Bala, Chatas where the owner passed away, you don't bring it, you leave it to die. Now, what we saw from this is that even though she passed away, they could still bring the Ayla. Now, what do you mean? Is it an appeasement for who? So it must be that you bring it even though it's not an appeasement for the like an atonement, or it doesn't help the owner himself. Amalei Medina Lach Ba'ila. Rish Lakish says to Rabbi Lazar, I know the Ayla, I know about the Ayla. The Asilach Misa, that can be brought after Misa. But Asham Delay Asilach Misa Minalan. How do you know that a Karban Asham that's not going to be an appeasement for the owner is still supposed to be brought? The guilt offering. Amalei Hari Machlakes Chabetzidei Rabbi Lazar Mafashim. So Rabbi Lazar says that's exactly what we learned in the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer says that you can't bring an asham. So Amar Rish Lakish says, are you the fellow that they say is a great person? 1 second. I'm talking about the Stam Mishnah. I'm talking about the anonymous opinion in the Mishnah, the Chachamim. And you're telling me just one opinion that I'm not asking about. Yeah?
Ouch. That day.
Why isn't this just another proof Shishaloba Shema is okay? Because obviously it's not Shem Mitzvah anymore, but it's still bringing it.
So-
Rashi alluded to that.
So Rish Lakish is asking that I don't have a source for that Shalei Lashma by an Asham should be even brought. He thinks it shouldn't be brought at all. Rish Lakish is asking. And Rabbi Lazar answered him, well, by an Ayla we find that it is. Even though it's not an appeasement. He said, I'm asking about an Asham. They said, oh, I have an opinion somewhere that an Asham is the same thing. He says, I'm not asking about that opinion. I'm talking about everyone else. Elam Rish Lakish says, Eftachana Pischal and Afshay. I'm going to give this answer. I'll open the door myself. Maseches Zevachim, it says in the quotes the pasuk that we had on the end of Daf Daled, we say that by the utterance of your lips, it should be brought the way you pledged. Hi Nadava Nederu. This is a Nadava. This is a vow. This is not Kidlael, as the Gemara explained before, that it's brought even though it's thus not an appeasement. It's only brought as a pledge, but it doesn't satisfy the vow. Yosef Rab Zera Rab Yitzchak Barabba Yosef Abaya Gabayo. I have Rab Zera and Rab Yitzchak Barabba. They're sitting, and Abaya is sitting near them. V'Yasvi V'Kamri. They're saying like this: Kash Leilu Reish Lakish Asam B'Layasilach Hamisa. V'Naslei Tamuda Maseches Zevachim. Reish Lakish's kasha was about the guilt offering. We don't find the guilt offering that should be brought after the owner passed away. So what we're saying is that if it's the guilt offering isn't going to work, it's not an appeasement. If it's not an appeasement because the owner passed away, then you don't bring it. That was Rish Lakish's question. Maybe you shouldn't actually bring it if it's not an appeasement. So he answers from Maseches Zevachim. He answers from the vow that says the pasuk that's talking about a vow that's brought even though it turns into a pledge instead of the vow, which means you have to bring another carbon. The pasuk is not referring to a guilt offering. The pasuk is referring to something that's pledged. It could be an ayla, it could be a shlamim. Those are things that a person says, I want to give a donation. But a guilt offering has to do with the sin that he committed. So that's not pledged. So the pasuk isn't referring to that. This is the question. Amlu Abaya is on the side.
It's the difference between what you're proposing versus something that's imposed.
Right. So Abaya, who's on the side, says, Rish Lakish mihacha pasa.
How much am I more like at that meeting, I guess?
Finally, I've been here
What is
the
that?
whole time waiting for a Shalom question. Finally got one.
Which Rabban?
Oh, how many people are here?
Yeah.
We have 3 names. We have Reb Zera, Reb Yitzchak Barabba, and Abaya is on the side. And they're talking about a conversation that Rish Lakish had with Reb Elazar.
Oh, I thought that was. thought that's where
But
they
they're a
all
later
did.
generation. They're talking about an earlier generation that was the.
He thought
So-
it was like, yes, amazing.
It's on a different level.
So Abaya says, Reish Lakish mi'acha pasach. Reish Lakish, he got his insight from here. It says, V'shachar reisa lachatas. You slaughter it for a sin offering. This is by carbon chatas. Isa l'shma kshera l'shma psula. By the carbon chatas, if you slaughter it correctly with the right intention, then it's kosher. If you don't slaughter for the right intention, then it's puzzle. Hashar kachim, but other sacrifices, l'shman kshera. This is our idea. Shachar Isal Chatas. By the Chatas, it has to be with the right intention. But for other ones, it could be slaughtered even if it's the wrong intention. It's still brought. Yachal Yirtu. Oh, if it's brought, maybe it's an appeasement as well. Maybe you don't have to bring another sacrifice. It says It says no, you do have to bring another sacrifice. It's considered an extra pledge, but it doesn't satisfy the vow. Maybe the Gemara says something that's brought as a vow and a pledge. So those, if you don't have the right, if the kohen doesn't have the right intention, then it doesn't satisfy the vow. It's only a pledge. But let's say it was an asham, guilt offering. Maybe it does satisfy the what his obligation of bringing. It fixes the sin. Amar Abaya, asham demirtzi lematzamar. He says that's impossible. Kal v'chaymer me'ola. We have a kal v'chaymer from the carbon oila. Ma oila sheina mechaper sheina meratze. When it comes to a carbon oila, which is not brought as an atonement, it's brought as a gift, and nevertheless it's brought as a gift. It doesn't satisfy even the gift. You said you were going to bring a gift. You didn't bring the gift that you said. Asham shemechaper and it didn't sheina meratze. An asham that's an atonement, for sure it's not going to satisfy. Gemara says, 1 second. Maybe by the oila it's entirely burnt. It's a different story. Over there it's a little stricter. And so over there it doesn't satisfy, but by the asham it would satisfy. The Gemara says, well, shlamim yechicha. We can prove from a carbon shlamim, which is not entirely burnt, and also it doesn't satisfy the vow. It says, mal shlam shkein tunin nesachim tunin v'schazav v'shaik. Second, shlamim is strict. Shlamim has the waving of the chest and the thigh, and it also has the wine that has to be poured. Not the wine, the oil. That's was there wine that was poured together with every shlamim? By the carbon tamid was. I guess by the wine, by the shlamim also. Okay.
This requires libation.
Libation. The Gemara says oila techiach. It says, well, you don't have that by the oila, and you see the same halachas by the oila, that it needs to be for the right carbon. Otherwise, it's not satisfactory. It's not chazer adin. So the logic revolves. It goes back and forth. And this is not like this. This is not like that. So therefore, we're going to have to look at the common denominator. What's the common denominator? In kachim, v'shachten shalashman ksherin ve'imratzin. The common denominator is that they're sacrifices, that if they're slaughtered for the wrong intention, they're still acceptable, but they don't appease. Afani avi yasham, also include in this the carbon asham, shu kaidesh, which is a holy sacrifice. If it's slaughtered for the wrong intention, it's still valid, but it doesn't appease. Okay, we have a tzad shava that teaches me this halacha by the asham. Because the pasuk that Rish Lakish quoted was only for neder nedava. So we thought that maybe Abaya said that maybe you can learn from a pasuk that says by chatas needs to be lishma, but everything else in asham. Asham would need, that should be an answer for us. So if you said if that's the case, you're going to learn from there, then maybe the asham would not even need to be the appeasement. The asham would even be an appeasement if it doesn't include, if Maseches Zevachim doesn't include asham. Maybe it not only is it a offering that's brought, but it's even satisfactory to cover his sin offering. He says, no, that's impossible. it can't cover the sin, because we have a kal v'chaimer that we can't learn from. If by an oila it doesn't cover the vow, so for sure by this it won't cover the sin. So it says now, but maybe it's not a good kal v'chaimer, because the oila has a stringency that this doesn't have, but the shlamim has a stringency that the oila doesn't have. So we go back and forth, and what we're left with is that we'll be able to include the asham together with the tzad hashavar. It'll be just like the oila in the shlamim. Where it says 1 second, tzad hashavar is not perfect. The common denominator, the common factor, it says malat tzad hashavar shvim shken yeshem b'tzibur. An oila and a shlamim are brought as communal offerings. An asham is not. So the Gemara says, well, taida techiach. Karban taida, which is a Thanksgiving offering, is not brought as a communal offering, and that has the same halacha. So therefore, the asham could be included. It says malataida came to the lechem. 1 second, the karban taida has bread that comes along with it. Maybe that's what makes it unique. But the asham doesn't have that. It says oila shlamim yechiach, but the oila and the shlamim don't have the bread. So obviously, that's not the factor that causes this halacha. So v'chaser adin leirizek rizet tzad hashavar shvem shem kosher v'shachtan shleich man kosher ein meratze. We're going to learn that just these are sacrifices, and if it's slaughtered for the wrong intention, it's still offered, even though it's not an appeasement. So too would be the asham. The Gemara says, all of the ones that are in the tzad hashava, in the common denominator, all of those, another detail of the common denominator is that all of those are donations. Elamarava, rather Rava says, this is the halachas, like the pasuk that we quoted before. Ikishan akasav l'shlamim. The Torah compares all the sacrifice to the shlamim. Mashlam shem kachim shachtan shleishman ksherim, just like a korban shlamim. When it's slaughtered, it's slaughtered for the wrong intention. It's still valid. Vein meratzin, but it doesn't. It's not an appeasement. It means the owner needs to bring another one to satisfy his vow. I'll also include in that the guilt offering, which that was the original question of Rish Lakish. Gemara says, how do you know? How do we know that in that pasuk we said this is the law of the oila and the mincha and the chatas, the asham and the melum and zevach hashlamim? How do we know that it's comparing everything to the shlamim? Which the halacha by the shlamim is that if it's brought for the wrong intention, it's a valid sacrifice. It means you finished the sacrifice, you finished bringing it, but it doesn't satisfy the vow. Maybe they should compare it to the chatas, which was in that pasuk as well. And in the chatas, the rule is not only is it not an appeasement, but it's not even finished being brought. It's immediately invalid. So it says, Amiyat Rachmana Isa, no, you're forgetting. We had a pasuk that says, "V'shachad Isa l'chatas," that you should shecht it for a chatas. This we quoted before. Abaya was quoting this. That only the chatas needs to be lishma. So that's memayet everything else that I don't learn other things from this. Okay, let's leave it over here. We're up to Simon Hagesh Basa, right? The Yosef. You see that?
By the sinning,
You see Rav Huna and Rav Nachman were sitting? Yeah, all right.
yes, it does.
Okay, easy fast, everyone.
Are we learning tonight? Or what, 6 pages?
Manish na halal is it?
Tonight is going to be hard to learn because we're going to be after the fast.
Okay, I'm just asking because today was 11.
There's page 11?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
We'll try to do it. We'll try to do a little bit more every day. Slowly,
Don't worry, we're gonna make that train.
We got to catch it before
We'll get to
2027.
Don't worry, we'll be there. Finished or not, we'll be
Thank
there.
you.
Yes,
But let's discuss that.
Yeah.
Okay.